Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the NIL too, because Tommy White, who played at North Carolina State last year, has transferred to LSU because he's gotten that NIL money and he's getting that opportunity now to make that side cash. So as a
Mhm.
college athlete now, I guess it's like a side. It's you get it like a side gig now. The NIL has been turned into like that side hustle, so to speak, as the kids like to say. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to bring up because we've talked about it on previous episodes about the transfer portal and how that might affect collegiate athletics going forward. Episode 21 today, again, talking about the proper way to coach your kids. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. Apple, Google, Spotify. Watch the show on YouTube, Softball Strength Academy YouTube page. I did see an article this morning from appliedsportspsych.org, and they discussed coaching your kids and how to properly coach your kids and some of the key points that you have to take into account. And one of them that stuck out to me the most was the positive effects of that and the negative effects of that,
Mm.
and how it actually will affect your relationship with that kid, whether it be one-on-one coaching or in a team setting.
Yeah, it is so challenging. And I think I have a phenomenal relationship with my parents. But in the same breath, anytime my dad would try to venture into that coaching realm, it was almost like we didn't have a good relationship anymore. And it
Right.
was very hard to balance. And I think, Coach Murphy talks about this a ton. He reads a lot of father-daughter books because I think he's in a little bit of a father figure, but he also just talks about how important that father-daughter relationship is to his girls. And so many times it's compromised because you have a dad that's trying to be a coach. And I think what's important to note is you can't be both at the same time. You can't be this really, really good coach and then also play the dad role. And also if you're going to be a really good dad, or your best dad, it's going to maybe sacrifice a little bit from the coach. And we have to try to understand that and hopefully be able to wear those different hats and know when to have that. But sometimes those lines get blurred and it's confusing for the kid, it's confusing for the parent. And I have to assume I have not experienced that myself, but in watching other parents through my athletes and through my teammates, it seems like one of the most challenging things that a parent can possibly try to do with their roles.
You know better than anybody how you would go every aspect of coaching and how you would go about coaching your future kids. And the one thing I've noticed with players who played in Major League Baseball, right, or softball players who played at some of the best programs throughout the country, they understand how to coach their kids because they take a positive approach. They take that negative approach too when it's needed, when warranted, and they know how to properly mix the two. And they also understand and get to know their child. Craig Biggio told me this once. He said, with Kevin, who's now with, of course, at the Major League level with the Blue Jays, he said, with Kevin, I always took the approach of having a conversation with him because I knew that's the best way that I could get through to him. Having a conversation with your kid rather than just bringing out all the negative things that you did in the game or all the negative things you're doing in that moment
Mm-hmm.
as you're working and training.
Yeah, and I talk to my athletes too because I have some athletes who have such anxiety about their parents watching.
Right.
And even, I was talking to one of my former teammates yesterday who is now a high school coach in Georgia. And she actually made the rule that everyone has to ride the bus home no matter what, so that her girls don't have to get in the car with their parents because it can be so bad.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. That conversation is huge because you have to at least start to gauge with your athlete, with your daughter, with your son. Hey, when do they want to have this conversation? And sometimes 20 minutes after the game is not the time to do it. And you and I have had bad games. Do you want to talk about the game and break the game down immediately afterwards? Probably not with anybody, let alone someone who is a parent who we already have a tough time receiving criticism from. So, I remember, I don't think my parents ever read a self-help book or anything like that about parenting, but they would always just say, how are you feeling? And I think just based on my response, they get an idea of if I was ready to talk about it, if I wasn't. And they always enjoyed watching me play, even when I got benched, even when I played poorly. They always were like, that was awesome to watch you in your uniform today. That was great.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know. I just knew that my self-worth to them had nothing to do with my performance, which was cool.
Well, there's some breaking news here. You actually got benched?
I did. I did my
Okay.
freshman year
All right.
of travel ball. I batted
Mhm.
like 132. I had
Yeah.
this, which I think I've talked about a little bit. I did horrible my first year of travel ball.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
And then my junior year of college, biggest slump of my life. There's 5 girls on the team that ended up starting my senior year when we won. And based on how the lineup worked with the pitchers, only 4 of us could play at one time.
Yeah.
So it was this cycle of like one of us couldn't be playing, and went into this huge slump. And for 2 weekends, I was a defensive placement, and I was just kind of put on the bench first time. My parents flew all the way down to Mississippi, and I sat the whole weekend.